Welcome to another exciting episode of All Four Downs podcast. I'm your host, Obi-Wan, and I have a special guest. Really, he's not a guest. He's actually the host of the All Four Downs podcast, but he finally made it. He was AWOL. I sent out a search party, right? And listen, it covers down like, did you know that this guy is not only the host of the All Four Downs, he's also the CEO of Clovercrest Media. Joe, welcome back.
Great to be back, Ovi. Thank you for it's been a rough couple of weeks. And it's funny, as you know, not that I've delivered them, but I've been writing with my final whistles and have not been able to make it, unfortunately. So we're back this week, and I'm excited that my first final whistle is the one that it is. I think you're gonna like it.
All right, fair enough. Well, we'll get to your final whistle on fourth down, but let's start off with first down. Or let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let me first recognize the VFW veterans. We're celebrating 125 years of supporting the veterans and their families. So big ups to the VFW. And also, if you missed this podcast, you can always check us out at cmgsportscentral.com. That's Clovercrest Sports. Not only ourselves, but any of your major sports, you could tune into all kinds of our audio and video podcasts. So moving on to first down. Big news, or should I say maybe not so big news, of Florida State quarterback DJ Uiagalelei. Now, if you follow me through all the way, you understand that it was a big mistake grabbing DJ Uiagalelei in the transfer portal from Oregon State to Florida State. Now, this was supposed to be the one to help Florida State get back to the national championship, or at least get into the college playoffs, right? However, it hasn't been not so great for Florida State, and the head coach doesn't want to make a decision to replace him. Well, now he has to. Now DJ Uiagalelei is out with a broken finger, and finally, we will see the redshirt freshman Brock Glenn, who is well-deserving, very motivated, and I believe that once he starts, we may see the turnaround of the Seminoles actually start winning games convincingly. So that is that note. On the other side, and this news broke out yesterday, the Big Ten and SEC athletic directors will discuss a possible partnership in football scheduling, along with their preferences for automatic bids in the next iteration of the college football playoffs. What's your take on this, Joe?
Well, listen, if you're the Big Ten, you do whatever the SEC wants, whatever it is that they want, however they want to schedule this, because to me, the Big Ten is just sort of hanging on at this point. I think if you look at the SEC and the Big Ten, those are the two that matter right now. And to me, the SEC's gotten better. It's added better teams. Their teams overall are having a better year. I think by the time the Big Ten is all said and done, I don't think it's going to be a great look for them. So again, if they can partner up with the SEC and get those games on their schedule, that's only going to help those teams. But the other thing is, I think the Big Ten's going to get exposed in a partnership with the SEC. Part of what you see generally in the September games, although I'll have a little bit more on this later, everybody fattens up this time of the year, right? Indiana's 5-0. Indiana will probably finish the year 1-6 in the rest of their games. So, listen, you want to get SEC on your schedule. You want to get those games on your TV networks, but those are going to be very tough games for everybody in the Big Ten. Again, maybe with the exception of Ohio State. So I like the move for them. I feel like this is what it's all been heading towards anyway, Ovi. We've been talking about this
It
for a
should
couple
have
of years.
happened. I mean, it should have happened many years ago, right? Like,
Yeah,
why would you go against schools that are not in the pretty much not in the run to the college football playoffs? Let's put it that
right.
way, right?
Yeah,
But they're picking out schools outside. Like, we don't no longer call them Division three anymore or Division two. They're just other schools, right?
yep.
But then you also have look, the Big Ten got the best record in the first 4 weeks of the college football. Big Ten is went 37-7. That's 44 total games non-conference. Okay. And most of them, Mountain West, Conference USA, Mid American, like these are the bottom three conferences. But we're not talking about the awesome games like Michigan versus Texas, right? We want more of those.
Yep.
I mean, that's how you differentiate like who is really going for the national championship. But instead, we have to concentrate on the 12-team playoff. And let me tell you this. I think that it's a great idea for the 12-team playoff to protect the bowl games, right? However, the conference championship is going to be a dilemma because now you have all these conferences creating rules as in case there's a tiebreaker, which is not fair. So you're going to have at least 3 or 4 teams with the same record. But what would happen if 3 teams are undefeated in that conference? Then you're going to go by the strength of schedule. I
Yep.
mean, who's going to have what? Or they're going to go by the rankings for who? Which poll are you using to get an advantage? So that's why I say to myself, like, you know what? This is not going to look good, especially conferences that don't have divisions. They just have a list of teams. So that's
Right.
going to be a big problem. But you're right. It's heading that direction, and they're the bullies, right? They got the most money. On the other side, we'll see what the Pac-12 could do because they just increased to 7 teams. Can they get the 18 to become an official conference? And on top of that, how many other schools will jump ship to join the Pac-12?
Yeah. Listen, I give those two schools a lot of credit for hanging in there, sticking to their guns.
Washington State,
Um,
yep.
Smartly, they were able to seize control of that conference away from the powers that be. Once all those other schools stepped aside, they were like, you know what? It's ours. We're taking it. A judge ruled in their favor. They basically kicked everybody out. And you know what? The Pac-2, it will get it done for this year. And I'm glad they're keeping it alive, and I think, Obi, what a shame too, because last year I thought the Pac-12 was the second best conference in college football.
Absolutely. You had the big storyline with Arizona beating 5 straight top 25 teams. You had Washington on the road. You had Oregon, the biggest rivalry, and then them two jump ship to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Okay. Like we could have used a lot more of those type of games, really. But you know what else was useful, right? That the Pac-12 is missing. That could have happened again this year was no other than Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah.
We're going to have more games like this,
Yep.
okay? And watching this game, Alabama, like, okay, I'm a big Georgia fan. And man, I was shocked. I was 28-0. But it's almost like that Rocky movie, okay? You could pick a number of any Rocky movies. And it seemed like, oh my God, Georgia's just coming back. You take away the first quarter, Georgia would have won the game.
Yep.
But it was the atmosphere. Like, I don't know. At the start of the game, I was like, wait a minute. Is this a playoff game? It's a sellout crowd, over 100,000 people in the stadium. The lights are dimming back and forth. You have referees. It's a regular game. But the referees have a special coin, heads and tails. I'm like, oh my God, is this the national championship? And then all of a sudden, it's already 28-0. And then you see that comeback. Carson back the second half. Georgia's finally playing Georgia football, but it was too late. That one error defensively on the very next play for Alabama to score that last touchdown kind of ruined it. It just took that momentum away. But over 12 million viewers watching this game, Joe, that's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you something. I put money on both of these teams this week because I really wasn't sure how this was going to go. And I'll tell you what, I think this was a best case scenario game, particularly for Georgia in a loss, because look, as you said, they were buried in this game. And the wheels could have come off the bus and everybody would have been like, well, maybe Georgia's not that good. Fact of the matter is, Georgia, I think, is still the second best football team in college football, and Alabama's a little bit better than them right now. I do
For
think
now.
this is a
For now.
preview, and we're going to see these two teams play at least one more time this year, maybe two.
I think exactly. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if
I
it was
wouldn't
3
be
parts to the
upset by
story.
that. If these
No,
teams play two more times and you get two more games like this, I know it sucks for
it's not
everybody
going to
else.
be the same, Joe.
It
It's
sucks
not
for
going to be the
everybody
same.
else, but too bad.
Mhm.
These are by far the two best teams. Again, the fact that Beck was able to lead this team back there, the fact that they, as you said, the second, third, and fourth quarters, I mean, they won that game. They got to feel good about that. I saw ESPN has Texas ranked number 1. What are you guys,
We'll talk about those
stupid?
rankings. We'll talk
What
about
are
those
you guys
rankings later.
kidding me? You think Texas is better than either one of these teams? What are you smoking?
Oh, we definitely gonna talk about that, honestly. Because last week was the biggest dilemma, right? After the game, Alabama's number 1, but Texas number 1. Like, who's got what? Before it was Georgia number 1, then Texas, just because they played Michigan. Like, it's all over the place, right?
Yeah.
But here's some other games that was interesting the most too, because Kentucky and Ole Miss. Now, Nick Saban left, and everyone jumped ship like, oh, this could be Ole Miss's year. Yet, Ole Miss didn't take Kentucky seriously because they didn't watch the game between Kentucky and Georgia. Okay, but what was mind-boggling is Ole Miss, like Lane Kiffin had these guys have codes, signs on when to pretend that you're hurt. And they did it in a regional television or telecast, right? And they did a replay showing the players dropping. Nothing was wrong with them.
Yeah.
And you can't say it was a heat factor because it wasn't that hot. Okay. There was no muscle cramps and nothing like that. They kept looking at the sideline. Oh, you meant for me to fall down? Oh, okay. Boom. Just to reserve their timeouts and reserve time for them to plan. For what? Kentucky came back and scored a touchdown, and Ole Miss could not capitalize. And I'm so happy Ole Miss lost.
I am one of those people who knew that Ole Miss, it wasn't going to be their year. I had Kentucky winning this in multiple parlays. I saw this one coming a mile away. And by the way, I've been tough on people like Dan Mullins in the past. And I don't want anyone to take that as a sign that I condone Lane Kiffin as a human being or as a coach, because he's about as trash as you can be. The fact this guy's gotten so many opportunities, so many places, it's and because how I feel
Right.
about when you're teaching kids, and he's a predator, not in like a molesting kind of a way, but he's not the
No.
kind of guy that you want teaching young men how to become young adults. And the fake injuries didn't surprise me. They couldn't even like pretend that that's
No.
what a loser he is. And I'll tell you right now, this won't be their only loss of the season. And I think this is
No.
Lane Kiffin trying to get himself out of Ole Miss for better opportunities, which is pretty much what he's done his entire life.
And you know what? Is the Florida job might be open. Okay. Florida State's job might be open. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lane Kiffin was coaching Florida International before he left as the offensive coordinator at Alabama to jump ship to Florida International to coach there. So what if he's trying to find his way back to the state of Florida? Just saying. His name popped up all elsewhere, Louisville and Notre Dame. What a game. But Notre Dame scored 21. Okay. However, I'm concerned about Notre Dame because after that, it was all Louisville. So I'm just saying now I got them higher ranked than the other APs and a coaches poll, but there's reasons because of the fact that this game had two top 25 teams going at it. Has more value than trying to play against some scrubs. Just saying. All right. And lastly, in first down, you got to love our military. You got to love the non-scholars. And I had to say non-scholars because these guys don't have scholarships. They just got a free ride of education and they're going to serve our country. Okay. This is Army's first year in the American Athletic Conference. Join Navy. Navy's been there for a while. What a coincidence. They're 4-0, 3-0 in the conference, and they got to see each other on their 12th game. Can you imagine both these teams in history, never been done, that if they were to finish undefeated going into the last game, that's going to be epic.
Oh my God, could you
Or the
imagine?
Commanders-in-Chief trophy and clinching their way to the college football playoffs, probably most likely the number 5 seed.
I love this. I love this. I mean, you know, not for nothing. I think when you talk about the great programs in college football, and I know maybe the last 20, 30 years, you know, not so much. Obviously, you know, you bring up the scholarships. You talk about the talent gap between SEC and everybody else. You know, what could you expect from Army and Navy? And yet, over the past 4 or 5 years now, man, these guys, it's really the system and it's the discipline that you know, I think comes with, you could speak to this, being in the military and going out there and executing against guys that are bigger and stronger, faster, more talented, and you're still getting it done. I think it's a great testament to what we're teaching these young men in the armed forces. And I think you juxtapose that, you look at, you know, a piece of crap like Lane Kiffin and what he does, or you look at Florida and Florida State, where you see all that talent go to waste because they are trash programs led by trash human beings. This is Americana. This is college football. This is what we like to see. I love that.
I definitely love it too. And I would love for Army to beat Navy. But anyhow, Navy versus Air Force is happening this Saturday, October 5th. Air Force then will visit Army on November 2nd. And on December 14th is the Army Navy game. Spectacular. You're going to have everybody dressed up in their dress uniforms and everything cheering on. And who knows if the commander in chief will be there, but it is going to be epic. I just cannot wait. Moving on to week 6, and these are my rankings going from 21 to 25. LSU, Pittsburgh, Arizona, Kansas State, and Navy. Yes, I put Navy in there, and Army is ranked number 26, by the way. Just didn't make it to my top 25. We have Ole Miss, USC, Iowa, Oklahoma, Indiana, 16 through 20.
Might as well be India because they won't be there much longer.
That's exactly where they're headed, right? 11 to 15, Michigan, Miami, Iowa State, BYU, and Utah. Look, Miami 5-0. A lot of them got them on the top 10, but I'm going to tell you this. After watching the last game with Miami making so many mistakes, it's just mind-boggling to see how they could be an elite top 10. All right.
I agree.
Let me see what else. In Michigan, listen, they lost a big game to Texas, but it seemed like that didn't phase them. So I'm kind of liking them that they're sneaking up all the way to the top. 6 to 10, I got Georgia, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Mizzou, and Clemson. Clemson learned their lesson against Georgia, and they've been stopping people left and right. Maybe, just maybe, Dabo really does trust himself as a coach and not depend on a transfer portal and really training his kids what right looks like. So I got to give him credit for that. Yes, I have Notre Dame at number 8. But listen, yeah, they lost to Northern Illinois, but that's their only loss. They beat another top 25 team this weekend. So what's the problem? Yeah, I know. They didn't stomp Louisville. I understand. But they won the game. And when the committee looks at this, they don't care about what the score was. They care was, did you beat a top 25 team? So their strength of schedule is a little bit harder than Ohio State. I'm just saying, I'm just talking real deal there.
I think when you lose a game like they lost, though, I think there's got to be a bigger penalty in that. To me, that's unfortunately, I don't agree.
I
That they're a
know,
top
I
10.
know. And you know what? And another way is that Northern Illinois was ranked in the top 25 after that game just to lose. Okay.
Yeah,
So you have a point there. By top five, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. Ohio State's there. And the only reason why this is the year that they do have the talent, okay, and that 14 players who were eligible to go to the NFL decided not to come back, and they're working on their new quarterback. And I could understand why, but they're still not battle tested. Penn State, they've been winning games bigger, and they look a lot better than a lot of years. Really deserves to be number 4. And then I have Oregon. But my take to you, and I know your answer, and I know you agree with my number 1, right? But is there really a conversation to have and debate to be who is number 1, Alabama or Texas? And the reason why I'm asking you this, you're looking at the AP top 25 and the coaches poll. They're not in sync for like 3 weeks in a row as to who should be number 1. So who do you think should be overall number 1?
look, I think you're trying too hard if you're trying to say Texas is number 1. I don't mean you. I mean anybody who thinks that. You look. Alabama just beat the number 1 team in the country, and what were they ranked 4th at the time or 5th, whatever they were? I'm sorry to say, I think a game like that, given where the SEC is right now in college football, you would have to be a moron or you're just being obtuse if you're like, no, Texas is number 1, Bama. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. I'm so look, Texas is very good. Texas may end up having themselves a year, but based on everything we know about those programs, the fact that somebody beat Georgia and they're not number 1 and that there's so many teams now in front of Georgia, to me, is nonsense. Again, in light of the Notre Dame loss, I would have dropped Notre Dame 35 slots for that loss. They'd be so buried they wouldn't know top from bottom. They wouldn't know what's going on. A good loss by Georgia, a great win by Alabama. I don't care what anybody else did, quite honestly. It doesn't matter. And here's the thing. We all know it.
Mm-hmm.
And some people don't want to admit it yet. That's fine. We just talked about the fact that Bama and Georgia will play again and possibly a third time this year. And no one's going to complain because it will be the best games we see.
True story. I agree 100%. But I'm just interested to see, can Texas really survive the SEC? And they haven't played nobody yet.
Big 12 year
they only played
out.
Michigan, which is a Big 10. They have a bye week, but next week they start with the SEC. Okay. Ole Miss still got to play Georgia. There's so many good games.
Yeah.
Georgia by far has the hardest schedule than anyone in college football. And if anyone wants to argue with me on that, we could sit down and look at the whole entire list, all 12 games. And I said this even during preseason. Automatically, they're playing 5 top 25 teams. And they started with Clemson. So imagine that. Just saying. But I got you. I totally understand about Notre Dame. I'll take that under consideration for next week's pollings. So we'll see on that, right? But if they lose 2, I'm sorry. See ya. That's a big drop right there. But hey, imagine if the season ended according to my top 25. Can you imagine? These are some epic games. A possible Georgia and Oregon game, Mizzou versus Navy. Yeah, I said Navy because right now I believe that they'd be front runners in the American Athletic Conference. Notre Dame versus Texas, Tennessee versus Penn State. I like that Tennessee Penn State matchup should have happened. And imagine that the winner will go and face Ohio State, which, by the way, Penn State does not play Ohio State this year. Go figure. They got so lucky there. All
Yeah.
right. But who knows what could happen in the ACC? Who knows what could happen in the Big 12? It could be Iowa State or it could be Kansas State. It doesn't matter. The conference champion, the top 4 conferences really will get an automatic bye week and play in the quarterfinals. The 5th one, it will be ranked number 5. So that's why I have Navy there. But as of right now, I mean, look, it's looking fabulous. It's epic, and it's a good way to end the season, going against a lot of good schools. But why can't we start it that way instead of playing teams that really don't have a chance? Just saying, let's make it more competitive.
Yeah, I've been saying that for years. I don't like that. Uh, Again, you look at a team like Indiana who right now, again 5-0, and it's like, oh, everybody wants to put them in their top 25. Makes sense. I understand why you would. Who've they beaten?
That's a great
They've
question.
beaten nobody. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, really? That's a better team than Boise State? Why? Because they're in the Big Ten? What? I don't know. I'm just not buying it. These teams fatten up early, and then
Well,
look,
they're beating FIU, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland. Now
yeah,
they're
I'm
on
not
the road to
impressed.
play Northwestern.
I'm not impressed.
Oh, nah,
And once
not
they
no.
really get in the conference play, the wheels, as they generally do, will fall
You
off.
only get really Ohio State and Michigan, and let's see if USC will make some noise. I love their front 4 and their defense. They made a lot of improvement. They got an actual defensive coordinator. I see a big difference now than I did last year and the year before when they had no defense whatsoever. It's almost like, hey, I'll throw the ball in the air. You guys throw the ball in the air. Now we're actually seeing some USC football.
Well, yeah, I mean, if nothing else, they'll learn the value of defense
Mm,
and how
defense wins
important it is to
championships,
have
right?
somebody that can occasionally stop an opponent. And it is important in a conference like the Big Ten.
All right, this schedule this week, we got Michigan State versus Oregon, Alabama and Vanderbilt, Iowa versus Ohio State. Oh, we'll talk about that game later. Clemson versus Florida State. That might be a bye week for Clemson. Baylor and Iowa State. Very interesting because we don't know what we're going to get out of Baylor. UCLA versus Penn State. Auburn versus Georgia. Tennessee versus Arkansas. Mizzou versus Texas A&M. And Navy versus Air Force. The Commander-in-Chief Trophy starts on that day. And then Texas and Notre Dame, they got a bye week. And it's all she wrote when it comes to that. So here we go with third down. It's time for some picks. And we'll start off again. We're not making no picks, but Joe, you and I, we got to agree. We got to stick with this undefeated streak that I'm talking to you about. Let's have this undefeated season all the way to the end. That will be the biggest storyline in college football should that happen. But you got Navy at Air Force. Air Force is looking raggedy. I guess they lost all their stars and they all went flying, aiming high over there. And then you got Army versus Tulsa, not looking great, but I will not sleep on Tulsa anyway. But I do predict that Navy and Army will be 5-0.
Yeah, I totally see that. I'm with you there.
Absolutely. I thank you. Thank you very much. However, let's go ahead and move on here. And for you, you can always do the money line. You pick who you think is win. I'll do the spread. SMU goes on the road against Louisville. After making some comparison here, and the way Louisville ended the game against Notre Dame, I feel like they're going to have that itch, that desire. Yeah, SMU is 2-0 against Louisville, but that was in the 80s. We're in today. Louisville will cover 7.5. Who you have actually winning this game?
I'll take Louisville on the money line. I think it is going to be a close game. I would not mess with that spread. I think SMU will keep it close. I think this game may come down to 3 or 4 points. I'm not giving you 7.
Okay, I'm taking a 7.5. Let's go. All right. Indiana versus Northwestern, 13.5 points. I'm taking Indiana.
I'm going to also take Indiana in what I think will probably be their last win of the season.
All right. They're gonna be happy going 6-0 and then go 6-6 at the end of the season.
Yep.
This is oh, I will be happy. And I've been watching a couple of games from South Carolina. Ole Miss goes on the road against South Carolina. Ole Miss losing to Kentucky, but Ole Miss might be in trouble. They could lose 2 in a row. South Carolina got cheated out on their last game. They should have won this game. Okay. I'm taking South Carolina. They're not going to give up on their head coach. I am taking the money line because the money line is bigger. You could win bigger money than the spread. It's probably like minus 112, and I think it's higher for the money line. But either way, either you take 9.5 or just to pick this game, South Carolina, I'm guaranteeing will defeat Ole Miss. And Jackson Dart could dart himself somewhere else.
Yeah, I'll take Carolina and the points. I think I don't know if they're going to win this game. I think Ole Miss might pull it out. I do think that they're a little on the trash side. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost too. But if I'm parlaying this, I'm probably taking the points just to be safe.
All right, fair enough. Auburn versus Georgia. If there's anything that Georgia will do on the following game after losing how they lost and the fight that they gave to try to make it a game, I'm feel sorry for not only Auburn, but I feel sorry for the head coach as he will depart and be fired after this game. Georgia Bulldogs, 30 points and more.
Yeah, I would give the points here. I think Georgia, like you said, I think Georgia wins this one in a blowout. And I'll tell you what, I think Auburn might be the only trash team in the SEC.
I'll second Vanderbilt, but okay. Iowa visiting Ohio State. Now, this left me scratching because I was so known for defense. Okay. And there's a lot of games that Ohio State has played that's not even in the conference. This is their first conference game. They play nobody. They need to be battle tested. And you're going against Iowa. But the thing is that McNamara and whoever's quarterbacking for Iowa, they're not that great. And it just wouldn't surprise me. Their last meeting was 2 years ago, and Ohio State blew them out. This could be another game like that. So I'm taking Ohio State on the spread.
Yeah, I think best case scenario for Iowa, you hold the Buckeyes to 3 scores. You probably don't score with your trash offense. So I think this one, again, either way, you could take the money line or take the points, but Ohio State.
Alabama goes on the road against Vanderbilt. I just told you. Yeah, I'm taking Alabama 24.5.
Yeah, this one will be an absolute blowout. Bama, I think, it just showed they're the number 1 team in the country. And I'll tell you what, Jalen Milroe, next level. He's there.
Yeah, until we meet again. All right. Clemson versus Florida State. I'm taking Clemson. You may as well add 25 or more. And I know they're going to have Brock Glenn as a quarterback, but this is the end of the era for their head coach at Florida State, because how you go from almost making to the college football playoffs to like you only got 1 win, bud.
This is epically bad by Florida State right now.
Mm-hmm.
I you know how I feel about Florida State, and I've always felt that way. And I thought last year, being a trash program, they didn't really have much room to talk. And all they've done is back up everything I've said. That said, Clemson slightly resurgent too. We wrote them off last year as maybe the end of the dynasty. I've still got thoughts on the ACC and its relevancy, but for now, Clemson's still king of the hill.
Absolutely. Tennessee and Arkansas. This, I don't know. I know that the percentile is greater for Tennessee, but Tennessee is one of those teams, man. You never know what you're gonna get. Remember that one time they had I forgot that dude's name. They had their star quarterback.
Hooker.
Yeah, there you go. And he was supposed to be the next best thing. They're gonna take down Georgia, and Georgia wiped them. They wiped them. And this is why I say, like, come on, man. Yeah, I got them ranked too. They deserved it, but this is Arkansas, which has a tremendous run game. But not yet. I'm stick with Tennessee.
I agree with you a little bit. I don't think Tennessee's as good as they are. Arkansas is a tough place to win on the road. As you said, they can really grind it out. I think I might take Arkansas and the points in this one. I think they might be able to keep it to within 10. So I think Tennessee's a little overrated, as they usually are this time of the year.
Tennessee has only beaten, well, they beat two top 25 teams. They beat NC State 51-10. They beat Oklahoma 25-15. Now, that was a great game. That really was. And you got to give props to, look, was it? Yeah, Oklahoma, if I'm not mistaken, almost tried to make a comeback. They scored 12 points in the fourth quarter. They outscored Tennessee in the second half. Not good enough, especially that momentum to Tennessee have. But Arkansas, if they could avoid turning over the ball like they did last week, they turn it over. They just give games away. That's not how you win games. They might have a chance to upset, and you might be right with your spread. Baylor versus Iowa State. Iowa State will clean house with Baylor.
Yeah, I feel like Iowa State can get it done here. I think they'll cover. I think they win this one by a couple touchdowns.
Miami on the road to California. Miami had a big scare this past, I think it was a Thursday night game. I had the spread for them, and they did not deliver. They barely won the game.
I think this will be another one of those. I think you take money line Hurricanes. I think you could take the points and go Cal here. I think Cal probably loses by 7 or 8 points. So again, I think if you're looking to parlay this in some way, I would take those points. I like Miami, though. That said, I do like Miami this year. I think they look pretty solid, but like you said, some question marks still. But
wasn't this the game that took away the Hail Mary?
Yeah,
that was the game, right, against Virginia Tech. Yeah, close one. Maybe they'll learn from that game and take care of business with Cali. All right, we're moving on to fourth down. It's the final whistle. Now, I had a lot to say, and for the last few weeks, but my thing was, and we just covered it on the show. And before I pass it on to you, Joe, that Georgia and Alabama game was my final whistle if you didn't show up, right? And just come to tell you that these are the top two schools in college football. And shame on them for not allowing Georgia to be a part of the college football playoffs last year. But now that we have 12 teams, there's no excuse. The only thing I would like to say is let's have a final and make sure that Georgia is not in the same bracket as Alabama. And hopefully we'll see those two teams in the finals. But hey, that's my take. Thank you. And Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, OV. Nice to finally be back. Great week. Here's what we learned in the month of September in college football. Those gimme games, well, they are not as easy as they once were. 13 games so far this season where a team had a win expectancy of 75% or more has lost. It's been that kind of season. The SEC is head and shoulders above everybody else. It's not even close. I have a ton of respect for the Pac-2. Ohio State is the only Big 10 or 18 or whatever you want to call it worthy of the top 10. I said what I said. Miami is the best team in Florida. It's not even close. The ACC is on the verge of becoming irrelevant. The Big 12 is. Despite their loss to Alabama, Georgia still has a 72.3% chance of making the postseason. Georgia is better than 3 of the teams ranked ahead of them, 4 if you're looking at OV's poll. Alabama is the best team in the country. Jalen Milroe should start clearing the mantle off right now. Texas is not the best team in the country, and they're not even number 2. That's the way I saw it in the month of September, and that's it for this week's All 4 Downs. For Obi Muniz, I'm Joe McGuire. We'll see you next Tuesday night for All 4 Downs.